Good evening. Welcome to a moody and rather gloomy, beautiful evening here at Derwentwater, just outside Keswick in the Lake District. My name is Ian, and welcome to this new channel. And I'll start off by being completely honest. I consider myself to be a beginner as a landscape photographer. I bought a camera about 15 years ago, spent 2 or 3 years taking shots, not being very serious, JPEGs, into Photoshop, a little bit of contrast tweaking, Bob's your uncle. Sometimes worked, sometimes didn't. But then my other obsession, which is music, I'll come back to that in a bit, sort of took over and I put my camera back in the bag. It's an old Nikon D90. It was a good camera then, and it's a good camera now. Maybe I'll upgrade it, maybe I won't. I'll see whether or not whether my skills as a photographer come anywhere close to the limits of the camera before I think about shelling out loads of money. But in beginning, again, as a landscape photographer, I went to the place where most people go to. I went to YouTube, and I found lots of different channels, lots of different photographers. Some of them have been truly inspirational, and I'm following a couple in particular. I'll name check Chris Sale and Henry Turner if you want to check out their videos. They're both landscape photographers up here in the Lake District, and they're both amazing. And their approach is fantastic. Their approach is, as I say, properly inspirational for me anyway, as I'm starting. But I also found something in YouTube, in some of the corners that I wanted to talk about in this video, which is particularly relevant to me as a beginner, or a relearner, an improver perhaps, and may well be useful to you. And I thought I'd talk about my thoughts. There's a particular sort of niche, usually full-time professional photographers, usually excellent photographers, but there's a little bit of what I can only call snobbery comes in when they're talking about photographing scenes like this. I've come this afternoon to this old broken concrete jetty on the corner of Derwent. We've got cat bells in the background, moody skies, absolutely beautiful place. Iconic image, has been photographed 1,000,000 times, will no doubt be photographed another 1,000,000 times before this jetty finally disintegrates and falls into the water. But when they're talking about photograph iconic scenes, and in the Lake District there are hundreds of those, they talk about them in disparaging terms, I find. Not many, but a few, enough photographers for me to find them without really looking very hard, talk about these things in sort of disparaging terms, as if to say, you shouldn't bother photographing these things, it's pointless photographing these images, they're beneath you, they're certainly beneath me as a photographer looking at your images, I wouldn't even bother looking at your images if you bother photographing these things. And I started to wonder whether or not that made any sense. It didn't make any sense to me. And I related it to my being a musician. I've been a musician for 40 years. I started playing the guitar when I was a teenager. And like most other people, when you start playing the guitar, you learn by playing other people's songs. You know, the standards, the classics, 3 chords. You learn about the structure of harmony, you learn about chord structure, you learn how to make chords, you learn how to switch from one chord to another. The very basic mechanics of music you learn by playing other people's songs. Then you get better, and you learn more difficult songs. And you learn how to start breaking the rules that you learned when you were starting out as a complete beginner. And you learn why breaking some rules works and breaking other rules doesn't work. You learn why something in a particular context will work, but in a different context, the same thing sometimes doesn't work. Then you buy an electric guitar and you start playing classic solos. You want to be a lead guitar player, you want to be a rock god, and you learn how to play All Right Now and Hotel California and Sweet Child of Mine. And then you find a guitar player that you love and you want to sound like him and you want to be him, so you play all of his songs all the time for months and months and months. I remember spending nearly a year playing nothing but Peter Green songs just because I wanted to sound exactly like Peter Green. And in doing so, you learn so much about technique, and you learn so much about style and about feel and about, what makes the art artistic, what puts the life and soul into something that's essentially a mechanical exercise. And along the way, without even trying, if you're lucky, you end up sounding not like your heroes. You don't sound like Peter Green or Dave Gilmour or Steve Vai. You end up sounding like you, without even really giving it much thought, by playing other people's songs. So what I've decided to do for the next few months and the next few videos on this channel which hopefully you might find useful if you're finding the same kind of attitude and you're suffering the same kind of dilemma, is to actually go and look at the photographs that inspire me, look at the photographs that just wow me, look at the photographs that I think, how did he do that? And try to take those photographs. Go to those scenes, find out why the composition works, take the photograph myself, compare it, find out that my photograph doesn't work nearly as well, and then try and figure out why. Mechanically, does my photograph not work nearly as well? What have I done wrong with the composition? What have I done wrong with the lighting? Have I moved my camera the wrong way? Am I using the wrong settings? But only by taking the same image and by comparing it to the images that wow me completely, I think that's a pretty good way to start out the process of learning how to take a good shot. But because before I can take my good shot, my great shot, filled with my photographic style and my character, my personality, all artists imbue their art with their own personality, don't they? And that's what we're all trying to do. But before you can do that, you've got to figure out how the guy who's already done it did it. And maybe in the same way as standing in my bedroom for a year playing Peter Green songs, if I come out here for a couple of months, maybe a year, maybe 10 years, who knows, and try to recapture and retake iconic images and then figure out why mine don't work as well, or why mine work but in a different way, then accidentally along the way I might find that I've become an interesting photographer. So I've come to this location. Let's start here. And yesterday I went to Buttermere. There's another iconic image up there. If you go to Google Images and Google Buttermere tree and see what comes up, there's a beautiful lone silver birch just standing at the southwest end, I think, of the lake, and it's been photographed a million times. And I tried it yesterday, and I've tried a couple of shots here today. So let's start off this journey of relearning how to be a photographer by taking a couple of these honeypot images. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. If I can get a good shot here, I'll be proud of it, and I'll be proud of myself. So let's put up those images and see what you think. I'll be absolutely delighted if you wanted to comment and let me know what you think about honeypot iconic images and what these photographers think of them, whether you avoid them and whether you find it useful to take them. And I'd be especially delighted if you wanted to let me know what you think of my attempts at taking these couple of honeypot images. And if you like the channel, there'll be more of this to come from me, and hopefully you'll find it useful to join me on what I'm hoping will be a really interesting and creative, and as long as the pandemic lockdown doesn't confine me to my bedroom for the next 6 months, really productive journey. Welcome to my journey.